You're
doing
dressed up for a Saturday morning?
Oh, yes. Well, thank you so much, David, for joining the author's table.
Absolutely. Thanks
Of
for having
course,
me.
absolutely. Now, David, as an author, what describes you?
What describes me? Creative. I think is a big part of it. Diligent. You know, you have to really want to tell a story. I think that's kind of my background is as a storyteller,
Right.
professionally and personally, and that's kind of got to be the biggest drive, the willingness and the desire to do that.
And I think that goes hand in hand too with marketing.
Yeah, marketing's harder.
Yes.
Marketing is more, um, I think, less a thing of desire. I think it's mandatory. But I will tell you, and I mean, I'm probably not telling you anything you don't already know, but so many of us are introverts,
Mm-hmm.
and putting ourselves out there is a big deal. I mean, it's for many writers and authors, just getting the book out
Oh, yeah.
is a huge deal, and because it's our baby, do we want people to really judge us or to critique us? We're not really sure. But if you want to do this, you do have to let it go at some point and move on to the next one.
That's right. It's like going to your first speech class.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Getting up.
It's interesting. What did I hear the other day that I guess giving a public speech is like the number one fear that most people have. And I'm like, wow, I've done that. I do it a lot. I used to do it a lot. I don't do it as much anymore. It was never a thing for me, but I guess people get really paralyzed about it.
Oh, of course. Standing in front of people and talking because you're the main focus.
Right. Yeah. The key is to if you can have some interaction. If you're just delivering the address, it's a little tougher. If there's a
Right.
little interactivity, like I think you see a lot of the young comedians now that I've seen, they really engage the audience. How are you, sir? Where are you from? And
That's right.
so they go, and it makes it, first of all, an interactive show. But then it's less about your jokes landing. I know there's a comedian, he works pretty blue. His name is Jimmy Carr, but he's famous for asking the audience, ask me the toughest question you want.
That's
He
right.
doesn't care,
Yes.
and he's been doing it for so long that he's got all the comebacks. Hecklers don't bother him. If you do it long enough, the hecklers don't bother you.
That's right.
And that's kind of the way it is with this too. If you do this long enough, you sort of have to ignore the voices in your head. You have to ignore the outside noise, and you got to write the story you want to write, and you got to put it down and get it as good as you can get it, and then you
Yeah.
got to get it out, and then you got to move to the next one.
That's right. Well said. That's right. Now, do you have any of your original writings?
What do you mean, like original manuscript?
Like, for example, like what inspired you to first start writing?
Well, I wasn't. I will tell you. So I was a broadcast major in school. I went to school to be a radio guy, and I had a kid in my an older guy in my neighborhood who was a disc jockey, and he was young. He was a phenom. I mean, he was on the local radio all the time. He was 20 years old, and he sort of encouraged me, and so that's kind of where I went. Wasn't necessarily going to be a DJ, but I wanted to work in radio. And then I got through 2 years of school and really had not done much about radio, honestly. I'd taken a lot, taken economics and taken English and taken math,
Yeah.
but had not done anything that was going to prepare me for life or for my career, and it was starting to concern me. So the first class I had to take was sort of an introduction to journalism, and the professor was a former newspaper reporter, newspaper editor from the Midwest, kind of a grizzled. I'd say he was a grizzled old guy, but he wasn't really probably that old. He's probably in his late 40s. Um, and so we would it was a 3 hour class twice a week, and he would teach for an hour and a half, and then we would write for an hour and a half. And it was basic journalism. Let's write a story about covering city council.
Mm-hmm.
Let's write a story about a crime. Let's write a story about the budget, right? Which exploded everybody's head. But at the end of the class, you would this was back in the days of typewriters.
Oh, sure.
It was kind of the end of that era. Actually, you would turn in your assignment, and he would look at you and he would say, "How many mistakes am I going to have to correct? And the answer obviously you want to say, well, I think it's mistake free, and none of them are ever mistake free. But you would give him a number, and he would suggest a number. So you would sort of get to a number, and he knew he was going to always find more,
Oh,
right?
sure.
And he
Yeah.
would say, well, how much do you want to bet? I don't know. He goes, let's bet a beer. Let's bet a beer. And so, and that's the way the semester went, right? And so the final exam was supposed to be a 3 hour writing test, and we walk in there, and it's 15 minutes of basically assess the class, right? Write that out, and then he said, okay, that's the final exam. We're done. We're all going to march down. There was a little area called the strip. We're all going to march down to the strip, and we're going to pay off our wagers for the semester.
Oh my gosh.
Everybody owes everybody beers. But he went down there, and we all threw in some money, and we had pizza and beer for all afternoon. And he told stories about what it was like to work in a newsroom and what it was like to work at a newspaper.
Hmm.
And this is what editors expect. This is what you have to do. This is what you can't do. And so by the end of that day, I'm like, I'm switching my major.
Oh,
And so I went, the next week, and I went and changed my major from broadcasting to journalism. And, with that summer, got a job writing. I did get paid a little bit for some features for the campus magazine.
oh,
Started working in the campus newspaper, and that's kind of where I sort of started. And once you get into a newsroom, if you want to tell stories, there's so much going on. You can
absolutely.
find some place to fit in,
Creativity.
tell a story.
You
Yeah,
know,
that's what started for me. I I don't have any of those clips anymore.
oh,
I do have some clips from when I worked at the local paper there, and then when I moved out of college, I have a few. I don't like to read them.
oh, because you're critiquing yourself now, right?
Yes. Yeah. Oh my God. What are you doing with this?
Yes.
Yeah.
See, like journalism reminds me of sort of like programming, because you literally have to do step by step. Not just for the computer, but for journalism, it's the same thing.
Yeah. You have to have a lot of the elements
Yes.
of it for sure. I mean, they call it the reverse pyramid. You put the most important stuff first, and you get down. And in the old days, of course, it was because type was expensive. Newsprint was
Hmm.
expensive, and so they would lay the type on the paper, and they would just cut from the bottom. The people who were cutting your story were not your editors. They were guys on the press room floor, women, whoever, and they cut it where it fit. And so, if you have the most important stuff at the top, and you follow that principle,
Yes.
the theory is that they're not going to cut anything that matters. That's not really what happens in reality, but that's the theory.
Well, I
But it
remember.
is it is it is formulaic. You're right.
Yes. I remember in art school. I mean, this was many years ago too. I remember because we had to buy the fonts. You know, it,
Oh yeah,
and it was like the kind of like you place it where you want it and you rub it on, and then it was that type of
yes,
talk and the time consuming, and the same thing when in printing. It was that same e plates, and it was that different process altogether.
yeah, 100%.
you,
Yeah,
kn- you know
yeah. Wow, I didn't realize that.
oh yeah, it was well, because I've been in graphic and advertising for many years, and
Yeah,
I remember when desktop publishing was coming out. I mean, it was a whole new thing. So it was that same learning process, and that's how you grew. But
that's it. Right. Yeah. Well, the technology changes. I mean, look,
yes.
AI is
Oh yeah.
turned things upside down. I mean, I was at a conference not this past November 2023, and ran into not a lot, a few authors who were learning how to write books with AI. And I'm just shaking my head. I'm going,
Hmm.
wow. Now, and I did run into a guy, and I do admire this. He writes a lot of books. He writes probably 5 a year. He cranks. I can't do that, but he cranks it out. And he created a character, and then he posted on social media a um, a photo of his character that he created, that he described to AI. He got AI to design for him, and it looks like a promo for like he writes crime novels. it looks like his photo of her and the way he had her standing, kind of like chest out and arms crossed, had a blue suit on. You can see her badge. Was almost like a promo for Law and Order, or right? Like it could be. It was that good, and the character. I mean, the woman looked. You knew it wasn't a color photograph, but
Right.
boy, it was close. And I'm like, wow, you just, he goes, yeah. He goes, and so, so he created this character and it helps him write because he can see her in his
Sure.
mind's eye. Now that's like his book cover, it's crazy. So the technology changes. There's
Absolutely.
editing, the editing tech, we didn't have Grammarly growing up,
Right.
right? We didn't
Yeah.
have Pro Writer Aid growing up. We didn't have Microsoft Word to correct our punctuation
We
and
had we had
spelling.
what is it? Windows like 3.1 or something?
We had a dictionary. We
Yeah,
had a
yeah.
thesaurus.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
it changes.
Yeah, that's right. Imagine another 10 years from now,
Oh man,
huh?
be in
Now,
a rocking chair.
yeah. Now, before you started writing your book, David, now did you have any ideas like on like what you wanted to call it, the cover design, the
No,
layout, none of that.
no, no.
So,
I was almost all the way through it before I had a title. The cover didn't happen until the very end. I actually uh, somebody told me one time when I was like midway through it, you should go ahead and have your start have working on your cover, um, and it will motivate you. You can post a picture of the cover on your wall, and it'll motivate you to get it done right. And I hired a guy to do it. The final cover looks nothing like the first cover. The first cover is fine. He did a couple different versions for me. But no, I didn't know any of that. And it, I know now that it's different here with the second one. I know the cover. I've already had it done. I knew the title. I know the title of the third one. I haven't started writing the third one, but I already know what it is. Um, I've got a couple other ideas for other books that I want to do.
excellent.
Kind of know the titles, but I certainly know the themes. I don't know what the covers are going to look like.
Now, like when you would sit down and start writing, did you just write or did you like sort of edit it and take it in steps or did you just let that just flow?
Mostly just let it flow. I mean, there was a little bit of editing. I'm pretty, as a reformed journalist, I
Right.
had to edit as I went along. That's really not what I would advocate. But it's hard, it's hard. Everybody's different.
That's right.
Everybody's different. And that's one thing I'll impart is, you have to embrace your own self and you have to embrace your own process. You don't want to get so hung up on the editing that you never get the book done.
That's right.
But you have to do it in a way that works for you. And if you can't get to the next scene or the next chapter until you're convinced this scene is done, okay, but you do have to get to the next scene.
That's correct.
I tended to write. I don't write sequentially. I don't write it from start to finish. I usually start. I don't start at the beginning. I start with the 3 or 4 scenes I really know I want in the book, and with the characters. And then at some point, after I write 4, 5, 6, 10 scenes, I'll go back and I'll say, okay, let's write the start and let's get to that first scene that I want to get to, and then to the next scene, to the next scene. You know, um, often, often I sort of know what the ending is, but
Hmm.
the ending has changed. The ending always changes. It changed 4 times in this book. And I know I've already written the ending to the second book, and I think that's probably going to change. I'm getting close, so I'm going to have to make that decision pretty soon. So yeah,
Oh, that's great, and we'll talk about your second one.
okay,
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, let's talk about your book called Dead Odds, a Conrad Keene novel.
yep,
Now, Keene is an FBI agent. Is that
yes,
correct? So,
yes, he is.
can we talk about that a little bit?
Sure. He's kind of a reformed attorney. He didn't come out of school to be in law enforcement. He was a former college football player, and he went to law school, and he got a job as an attorney, working outside of Atlanta, and just was really disillusioned by all that work. Young attorneys work really hard for not a lot of money, and they get ingrained into that law firm life, and it's really not much of a life. So I've been told. But and so and then he approaches somebody about applying at the FBI and gets this job, and the FBI likes to hire a lot of lawyers. They like to hire lawyers, or they have traditionally liked to hire attorneys. The reason is that when they investigate things, when the agents, the special agents, investigate crimes, they want the organization wants the investigation to always have the end in mind. So you're building a legal case.
Hmm.
You don't want to do anything to screw it up, chain of custody or poor investigative techniques, any of that stuff. So you're always looking at people about, all right, what can we prove? What do we know? What can we prove? And so, if you can't prove anything, it doesn't, the case doesn't matter. Um, and so, he's investigating white collar crime in East Tennessee, dabbling in here and there. And then he sort of gets dragged back to his home state of Florida. And hijinks ensue, so
So
that's the good news for every story, I guess.
that's right. Now, did it take you long to write it, David?
It took me almost 10 years.
10 years.
Yeah. I started it in 2005, I think. Um, and I think I finished it. I published it in 2018. So it took longer than 10 years actually to finally get it published. It was a long journey. I mean, I was writing when I was still working full time. I'm still working full time, but I was doing a lot of traveling.
Hmm.
So I had some time in hotel rooms when I could really sit in quiet and get things knocked out. But I thought I knew what I was doing. It turned out I didn't know what I was doing. I wrote this long story. I'll just tell you real quick. So I went to I thought I was done with the book. I'd written a couple of different drafts. I'd gotten it the way I wanted it. A couple of people had read it and given me some constructive feedback. And I'm like, all right, I'll go back and rework it. And I'd gone to a Florida Writers Conference in Orlando. And the first speaker was an agent from New York, and she represented a lot of different genres, including crime novels, which is what I write. And she talked about what New York wants. All right, here's what's going on in the publishing industry. And she said, if you're writing a crime novel, she said, you need to be in that 85 to 95,000 word length for your manuscript.
Mm.
And my head exploded. I walked in there and my book was over 200,000 words. And I'm like, oh my God. I walked around that entire day, just in a daze, thinking, how am I going to cut this book by 2/3?
Mm.
What am I going to do? I'm thinking about all the characters that got to go. I'm like, how do I tell this? The story's done. And I spent a long time trying to figure out how I was going to manage that. How do I,
You're
you
almost
talk about, it's a massive project just to get it done.
absolutely.
So it took me a long time to really just puzzle it out. Who's going to get cut? And now I have to give those words and those actions to another character that's going to stay, right? But you still have to shrink it. The baby
Yeah.
has to get smaller.
And you're basically restructuring your book.
100%.
Yes.
I went through 14 drafts. The last few were not, the last few was after it got cut. The hardest thing was getting it down to like 100,000 words and then really tightening it from there. Once you get it sort of done, you can go through the manuscript pretty well and tighten the crap out of it.
Sure.
And shrink it by a few thousand words.
Yeah.
But I thought I knew what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just telling a story like I normally would, but there's techniques.
Oh yeah.
And there's things to do and things not to do, but taught me a lesson.
That's right. The thing too is you could always bring a character in briefly and make it to where people are wondering who's this guy, but then you bring him in another book.
Right. I've done that.
Okay. All right.
I have one character that did not make the first book, and I thought he was going to be in the second book. I had to cut him out of the second book too. I don't know if he's ever going to make an appearance.
Oh.
We'll see.
Now, David, like for example, like when you had your book completed,
yeah,
your first book,
yeah.
Now, what and you got it in the mail. What went through your mind?
Yeah, that was pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I mean, they come in. You have to order them in bulk,
Hmm.
so they come in. These boxes of like 20 or 40. Um, it's just amazing. I mean,
It's like,
you just can't believe it's real.
yes,
The other thing is these days, it goes out on Amazon. You look on there and you look to see if you get any reviews. You look to see if there anybody actually ordered it. They tell you if you're going to write an ebook, to use the first several days, like 3 days, to like give the book away, so that you can generate some readers and generate some reviews. And I mean, I looked on there when I had like 900 downloads. I'm like, what? You know,
900.
now I needed, I wish they would have all been paid, but
Yeah,
they were part of that free giveaway.
that's, yes.
But I'm like, wow, okay, all right. Well, there's a thing here.
There's
It's real.
interest. That's right.
Yeah, right.
Now, doesn't that make you feel wonderful though? The fact that, I did this. You get it in the mail, you look at it, and it's like, wow. All the time and energy and the resources and just the research and just your writing, and someone, you get that book and you think, I did this from,
Well, there's a lot of people that want to write a book. Not many people do.
yes,
And it's weird. I mean, people. I mean, I've met people I went to high school with that just can't believe I wrote a book. I've got several people I went to high school with that have written books. Some bigger and more important, and some of them are textbooks. Um, but so we all sort of know that little group of us what it takes,
yes,
and it's hard. I mean, and it's not like it's intellectually hard, but there's a discipline to it. You have to do it. You're running a marathon.
yes.
And the only way to finish a marathon is you don't stop. You don't
That's,
quit.
the thing too, anybody can write a book, but, it's all the other stuff involved, the editing, and it's just, if you do the right thing and you do what you're supposed to do, you'll have a better result than just writing it and put it out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of examples, especially in early days of self publishing,
Sure, yes.
that, everybody, you just wrote and threw it up. Just write and throw it up. And it happens today, especially with
Yes.
AI, but it happens today. But those aren't the books that are selling a lot, I don't think.
Yeah.
Um, I went to a conference years and years ago. Listening to a guy named Stephen Hunter. Stephen Hunter was the Pulitzer Prize winning movie critic for the Washington Post. And before he went to the Washington Post, he was the Baltimore Sun. And he told a story about there was a point in time when he and a lot of his compatriots, like 8 of them, they would all get together and they would talk, and they were all working on books. He was the only one that ever published a book. And he goes, I'm not any more talented than them. I'm not any smarter than them. I'm not any more creative than them. I just never quit.
Mm-hmm.
I just got up every day and I wrote something. Even if you only write a couple hundred words, you're a couple hundred words closer to the end than you were when you started the day.
That's correct. Yes.
So that's it. I mean, you just have to find time, 15 minutes here, an hour there. I mean, I don't know anybody that's got 4 hours unless you're doing this full time, a whole morning or a whole afternoon or a whole evening to do it.
That's right.
You do it before people get up for coffee, and you do it after everybody goes to bed.
It's like time management. You just find time.
That's right. If you want to exercise,
That's
yep.
right.
You want to get the book done, that's right.
Put it in your daily routines.
Calendar, yeah.
And
Yep,
it's the
100%.
same thing too. Like, if you have a dream, you know, do it. It's not going to happen overnight, but if you take a little bit each day, it'll happen.
Well, bite-sized bits is the way to, like I say, I
Yes.
don't know if you get a manuscript and it's 100,000 words on a Word document. It's a beast,
Yes.
and so you can't look at it like 100,000 word document.
Baby steps.
You work on the scene you're working on, and
Yes.
then you go to the next one.
Now, David, explain your steps you've taken when to have your book printed.
So I published the ebook first. It published a
Okay.
couple months before the paperback. Um, and so once I had the ebook done and I knew it was exactly what I wanted, You convert that file, uh, to another file, because you want to keep everything the same.
Right.
Um, you have to buy an ISBN number, sometimes multiple numbers depending on how you're going to publish it and who you're going to publish it with. I had to go through the whole exercise of, one of the things that took me so long was, am I going to pursue traditional publishing? Am I going to look for an agent? I got to a point where like didn't think I needed an agent as a first time author, and finding an agent. I mean, that's like the
Hmm.
holy grail, right? Everybody wants an agent. Everybody wants to help them sell their stuff, but they're very difficult to land. And people land an agent, and they throw big parties. I didn't want to. I don't. I was getting up. I was in my 40s. I didn't have any. I didn't want to waste any time, honestly. And I went to a lot of conferences and I talked to a lot of authors about people who were publishing traditionally, not on the wait. I met a guy at a small print publisher when my book was really close to being done, and small print in Fort Myers. Loved the guy. We hit it off. He wanted to read my book, but said, it's going to be at least 2 years before I can get it out. I'm
Hmm.
like, what? He goes, yeah, because I've got my 10 books for the year, and I've got 6 of my 10 for next year. It's going to be the following year. I'm like, I'm just not going to wait. If it's ready, it's ready. Um, he's got a really good author stable of authors in his group. But so I made the decision to go self publishing. So then it becomes okay. You have to look at who's going to, is Amazon going to print it? Is Ingram Spark going to print it? Is another group going to print it? You got to look at quality. You got to, you got to
Hmm.
look at cost. It costs you money to get it printed. You sell it for more than you print it for. Um, are you going to do it in bulk, or are you going to do it print on demand, where they can order it through Amazon or anywhere else through Barnes and Noble, and then just get it a few days later? So those are things you have to do. And there's that technology changes all the time.
That's right.
Smashwords is a group. Draft Digital is a group, and then you got to you have to navigate sort of that point in time. What does the market look like? Who are the companies involved, and what kind of work are they doing? And
That's right.
it
Yes.
takes a little bit of time. You do, if you can build yourself a little bit of a network, a personal network of people in the industry, other writers, other
Yeah.
authors, some publishers, graphic designers like yourself who sort of understand who they're working with. That's very, very helpful. I mean, you got to go to conferences. You got to join a writers group. If you have a critique group, that'll help.
Yeah.
Citrus and Crime for me has been a really huge a part of my journey. There's a subgroup of Citrus and Crime called the Guppies that is great for first time authors. They put on tremendous uh, not podcasts, webinars throughout the year,
Hmm.
really educational, really advance the learning curve. And those are things that'll help.
And I think the biggest thing too for authors, especially new ones, is cost.
Oh yeah.
Once their book is done, it's like, where do I go? It could be very overwhelming
Oh yeah.
where they
You
end up.
have, yeah, it's going to cost you a couple $1,000s, from beginning to end, because you have to pay your, unless you're really good at graphic design, you're going to want to pay someone to do your cover. And you have to have someone who does your cover who also understands how to do book covers,
That's right.
because it's not just this wonderful piece of cover art. There's the back, there's the spine,
That's right.
and the width of the spine depends on the length of your book.
Yes.
Um, and you have to understand fonts, because it's not just the photo, right? You got your title, you got your author name, so maybe a couple other, maybe a sales phrase or something on the cover, but then on the back you have type.
That's right.
This is what the book is about, right? Or you have an author bio. So and you can't put white type on a yellow cover. It's got to be reverse type,
And
or you can't do the reverse type. Or you don't want to put black type or dark type on a dark cover.
you
Got to
know
be white.
exactly. And the biggest thing too is that each font has its own story, its own character.
Yes.
So you just can't just put any font on the cover or
Yeah, you're not
anywhere.
going to see a crime novel with sort of a curly,
No,
scripty
that's
title.
right.
It's going to be, hard blocks,
Yes.
maybe a drip of blood
Yeah.
somewhere.
Well, you got to have that. Now, what advice, David, can you provide to someone who wants to write a mystery and suspense novel?
Well, I think you sort of map it out. I mean, there's really sort of two types of writers. We call them pantsers and plotters.
Hmm.
The plotters are the people who really love to outline detail by detail. If that is you and you want to learn how to do it, I would suggest looking up some YouTube videos or going to find some audio or go listen to a guy named Jeffrey Deaver. He writes crime, a little bit of horror, um, but he writes mostly crime, and he is an unbelievable outliner. I mean, I sat through a seminar one time with him, and he teaches this is how I write my books. And by the time he's done with his outline, his book is almost done. Right? I mean, it's like so detailed. He just has to flush out each little detail in his outline, and his book will be done. I when I was done, I turned to my buddy and I said, "There's no way I could write a book like that." But I
Yeah,
appreciate there are
absolutely.
people who do it.
Yep.
Pantsers are mostly people like me who just want to tell a story and they're not sure how it's going to come together yet. And but they want to get it out. They want to vomit onto the computer keyboard and get it out. And so I would understand. So mystery and suspense. So the genre, if you're going to write a novel, it's between 85,000 and 100,000 words. You can write a little shorter. You can write a little longer. So you sort of have to know what you're doing there.
Hmm.
There are some techniques. I mean, you should definitely join Sisters in Crime, which takes men. Men are allowed to be members of the Sisters,
Yeah.
um, and learn the craft. I mean, there are special techniques. There are certain techniques that you use in crime writing that you don't use in romances. Romances, they have what's called a happily ever after ending. You don't have to have that in crime novels if you don't want. It can be a tough ending. You've got to know about how to do your clues, how to tell the story, third person, first person,
Right.
the different points of view. They rules are always made to be broken, but you don't want to write a book that has 10 different points of view in it. You can tell the story from the point of view of the protagonist the whole way through, or you can tell it from different, you know, the protagonist, the antagonist, some other people that are central to the book. So you want to have 3 to 5. Somebody that's really good about teaching that stuff is a guy named Steve Barry. He writes historical mysteries.
Hmm.
He's a fantastic teacher. One thing I'll say is that almost everybody involved in this business, from the creative end, from the editing and the writing, they're very, very generous.
Hmm.
Even the agents, even the publishers, they like to give back, right? They'll help you. If you go to conferences, these people are very, very approachable. There are no secrets. The secrets are all in your head anyway about your story.
That's right.
Nobody's gonna steal your story. Nobody's gonna steal your copyright. Don't
Right.
worry about that. Worry about the genre you're gonna write. And I can promise you, there's so many subgenres that whatever yours is, there's a genre for it,
Yeah.
right? Noir. There's so once you understand your genre, now go back and understand what are the techniques, what are the things to definitely do, and what are the few things to definitely not do to
Yes.
push you forward.
That's right.
And then you got to be committed. You've got to build that time into your day to get it done, right? And people. I mean, this is a very early days statement, but we don't write chapter by chapter. We write scene by scene, right? So chapters can have multiple scenes in them, and so you just write a scene, then write the next one, and write what's in your head. Get it written.
That's right.
Keep a little log of all your different characters. Another piece of advice I would say is, if you're stuck, um, go back to the beginning and write out your characters on a separate in a separate file or on a separate piece of paper. Write your character name and give them a story. What is your lead character? What's their name? What's their background? What's their family history? And just make it up. Decide what that person's life has been. And then go to the next character and then go to the next character. And what happens is it gives you an internal motivation for why each of these people interact, talk, and do things in your book because, well, there are some people that, I mean, the easiest thing, the funniest thing is like, I hear people that their main character only likes to wear white shirts, right? It's a thing from childhood. They only like, and this is a true story from one of the writers' pasts.
Mm,
They had a brother that only liked to wear white shirts, and here's the story behind it, right? That's a very small detail, but that's something you can use,
that's right. Yes.
and so once you flesh those characters out, and once you learn, what it is, then you can kind of maybe go back into your story and understand, okay, well, this is why they're doing this. Here's what the character is going to do, and here's what the action scenes are going to look like.
Yeah. Well said. Very nice. Now, David, what about writing has changed you?
Ooh, um, well, I mean, I've been doing it for a lot of years. My family has been used to me coming home. When I was a working journalist, I would often have to work
Oh yeah.
after the 11 o'clock news. Sometimes the 11 o'clock news would have something in there related to a story I'd worked on, and I had to update my story. Um, I worked a lot of weekends. I worked a lot of nights,
Mm-hmm.
and so I traveled a fair amount. So that was part of it. So I sort of, and you do have there is a piece of this where you're going to be by yourself. There's really not going to be a ton of people to help you. You're writing your story and it's you.
That's right.
And so you have to have people around you that support you going into your office or going into the bedroom or going somewhere where you're not to be disturbed.
Right.
Close the door stays closed unless there's a fire,
Right.
and they have to respect it. So you have to have your time, and it can be really tough sometimes. And I know authors with kids, it's
Oh,
hard.
absolutely.
It's hard, and so you've got to get up really early or decide to stay up late after the kids go to bed to get some of it done. And if you're in there by yourself, you're not in bed with your wife. You're not up drinking coffee at the kitchen table with the family. You're doing your thing. So there's a solitary component about it. I like the solitary part, but not everybody around me would like it. There were times when I would go to family functions and I'm going to sneak away to write for a while. Like, where did he go?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a part of it.
I think that's part of where going back to that time management, finding that little bit of time to just to write it, and then but branch from there. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
I
You know,
think getting up, if we're either morning people or we're night people, so that tends to be, there's a friend of mine, a guy, he's no longer with us, a guy named Tim Dorsey. I worked with Tim in Alabama when I got out of school, but Tim was a very prolific crime writer. Um, he wrote at night. He had kids, he had a wife. He would put everybody to bed, and by 10 o'clock, he was in his office, and he would work till 3 in the morning. He was very prolific even before he published his first couple books. And I remember when we would have conversations, it would always have to be at nearly midnight. He could he wasn't going to get up in the morning.
yeah.
Then he had to do his things during the day, and so that was his routine.
Yes.
He wrote at night.
That's awesome. Now, David, you have a website,
DavidRyanBooks.com.
and that's where they can go and learn more about you and purchase
Yes.
your books,
Yep.
and also Amazon, correct?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Now, now let's talk briefly about your second book, and which I didn't know about.
Second book is called Dead Sleep. It is a continuation of Conrad Keen's journey.
Mm-hmm.
He is no longer in the FBI. Um, he's found a different little bit of a career turn for himself, and he sort of gets lured back into law enforcement There's some things going on down in he's moved now from East Tennessee to South Florida and living in Boynton Beach. And there's somebody approaches him and says, we need this kind of investigator to start looking around at these crimes. We think they're crimes. We're not sure, and we want to figure out whether they're it's just a coincidence, an accident, or whether these things are really happening. And he's basically going to do what I would call like a mash sort of operation with triage.
Okay.
All right, the local police don't think this is a deal, and it's a little bit, it elevates kind of beyond the sheriff and the local police in terms of the crimes that he's looking into. Um, and of course, he runs into a serial killer situation, and he's running around trying to convince people. Said, "No, you have a problem here." The local officials are like, "We don't think this is. We think you're making more of this than what it is." And so, meanwhile, the serial killer decides, well, I really don't want you looking at me. So let's figure that out. So it's kind of the next part of his journey about
Okay.
him getting kind of pulled back into the crime fighting business.
Now, did you take that same process like you did your first book? Like,
I learned a few
oh,
things.
okay.
It hasn't taken me as long to get it done. Um, I sort of knew. I knew it took me. It was a lot faster because I knew what I was doing.
Yes,
I
yes.
knew. I did not repeat. I did repeat a couple of mistakes, but not a lot of them. And so it went a lot faster. It's been a lot smoother. I don't think I'm going to have to write 14 drafts. I don't know.
Yeah,
But the first draft is done.
nice.
The second draft is done. I'm on draft 3. It's still too long. It's not 200,000 words, but it's about 120. And so I've got to do some cutting. In fact, that's what I'm going to be doing this weekend. I just printed it out, and I've got to go through it and start doing some cuts. It's easier for me to cut by hand than it is on the computer. So I'm
Sure.
going to go through and cut it.
Now, are you having the same person do your cover as well?
I did not have the same person did my first cover is no longer working.
Okay.
So I hired somebody else to do it. I've had it for a couple months now. I had it back before the turn of the year, so it's done. The back cover, the nuances of it. Still got to write some jacket copy for it, but kept the same flavor. Just changed the colors a little bit, and I've got a third one. It's a trilogy, so I've got a third one I got to do, and I'm still already thinking about that cover. I may have this person go ahead and do that cover and get it done. But then again, even with the first cover, I made some changes to the first cover, and you can always change your cover.
Right. Yes.
I made some changes to it, and so the first person went back and made some adjustments. So yeah, but the cover's done for book 2.
Now the other two, they're obviously they're still in the works because you have some.
Yeah. I mean, I know what the third one's going to be about. I'm still sort of in the back of my head when I'm driving around. I'll see. Some things
That's
will come up, and I've got a little note. I got a little file with some notes on it that I know where it's going to go.
that's excellent.
The other one is a standalone.
Oh,
It's very different. It's about some computer hackers. So I'm really looking forward to writing that one. But I feel committed to getting this trilogy done.
oh, that is awesome. That's excellent. That's really good. Now, when is your next event, David?
Actually, tomorrow. Tomorrow,
Oh,
I'm
the
going to the
villages.
villages. Yes.
Ah, okay. All
Yeah,
right.
and after that, probably going to go to Killer Nashville this summer in August in Nashville. Yeah,
And is that a pretty good event there in Nashville?
yeah, it's very centric to crime writers, and it grows every year. Clay does a great job of Clay Stafford runs it, does a great job of putting it together. Brings in some really good authors, great panelists. They usually put together a crime scene in a hotel room that they'll leave open for the week, where you go in and you have to solve the crime according to the crime scene.
Oh, that is awesome.
It's a contest, right?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So that's a fun one. It's a nice one to go to. It's not as popular nationally as maybe it's not as popular now as it will be because it was started off as kind of a regional conference. But yeah, it's a good one.
Oh, excellent. Well, David, I thank you so very much for being on the author's table, and you had some very valuable and wonderful information to share.
Well, good. I appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity, Brad.
Of course, and I wish you the best tomorrow.
Yeah.
Make some sales tomorrow, and
Yes.
that,
Thanks. I'm looking forward to seeing. It's always fun to meet readers.
oh, absolutely, yes. Because I remember your booth was right next to mine.
Yeah. I think we're in the same spot this year.
Yes, yeah. I won't be there this year though, but I'll be there next year. So,
I'll see you in 2026.
well, let me know too when you get your books done, so we can get you on there, so we can share some more about your books.
Sure. Yeah, it'd be great. Thanks,
That's
Brad.
of course. You have a fantastic day, okay,
Yeah.
David?
Yeah. You too. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Have
You
a
too.
good 2025.
Oh yes, thank you.
See ya.
Okay, bye
Yeah.
bye.